do is I run an Energizer. An Energizer is like a 60-second activity designed to make people laugh. And you might think, well, that's crazy. The moment I hear laughter, I know I've opened the door between your conscious and subconscious brain and placed you metaphorically back in a shower. Why is that important? 87% of our brain is subconscious, only 13% is conscious. We use 13% of our brain most of our waking day. But the moment we relax, that door opens just wide enough.
Hello, and welcome to the Cash-Based Practice Podcast, a production of drjarodcarter.com, aimed at giving physical therapists and other healthcare practice owners the information needed for success in the private pay business model. And now, here's your host, Jarod Carter.
Hello and welcome back. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me. I am so excited about this episode. This is with a non-healthcare professional, and I'm excited to do more of these because I've always said it's really important to have mentorship and guidance outside of the clinical realm, outside of those who are clinicians who turn business owners, because it just brings a different perspective and a different way of thinking to the table that I think is really, really important. And, actually this guest, Duncan Worrell, he has made an entire career out of compelling people to innovate and think creatively and get outside of their narrow way of thinking. And though you may not have heard his name before, if you've taken your family to any of the Disney theme parks, then you have directly experienced a lot of the results of his way of innovative thinking. So I'm going to just read a little bit of his background from his website to give you an idea of this incredible guest today. I honestly was I didn't really think he was going to say yes to an interview, so I was pretty pumped. The former Vice President of Innovation and Creativity at the Walt Disney Company, Duncan Worrell spent his 25-year career at Disney developing some of their most innovative ideas and strategies, ideas that would forever change the way the company expands its impact, trains its employees, and solves problems creatively. What sort of ideas? Instead of asking, how might we make more money, Duncan asked, what if there were no lines in the Disney parks? The gates at the entrance, no reception desks, no lines for favorite attractions to pay for food and beverage. Fast forward to Disney's Magic Band, piloted and rolled out across Walt Disney World, eliminating the need to check in at hotels, waiting to get in the Disney park, lines to rides, etc. Disney's Magic Band has resulted in record revenues and essentially created an open source monitoring of consumer likes and dislikes, informing all future products and services. Duncan Worrell and his team were tasked with leading the creative process for Lucasfilms, Pixar, Marvel, Disney Imagineering, Disney Parks, and ESPN. I'm going to fast forward just a little bit here, and it says, while Duncan Worrell loved the challenge of running the creativity and innovation teams at the world's most creative company, he understood that his ability to successfully teach others to develop an innovation and ideation toolkit was something that could have massive impact for people and organizations across the globe. And so he left to launch his creative consulting company, Ideate. So I'll stop that there. He gives so much in this interview. I mean, it is a ton of information. And so listening back to it, what I would recommend for you, the listener, is possibly to listen to it twice. It's that kind of an episode. And to really hone in when he talks about taking people through certain exercises, when he talks about these different, kind of pieces of his toolkit, I want you to run your business through these exercises. I want you to sit down with staff, and if you can, like he does, bring in a naive expert. I might be saying that wrong. I have to go back to see what he uses for that term, but bring in someone outside of, your expertise, and really go through these methods and these exercises that he has people and has teams do. Because honestly, I think that the customer experience in healthcare, the average customer experience, is certainly broken. I think most people listening to this would agree. And that if we are going to be asking people to, pay more out of pocket for our services, we have to be giving a killer experience. And that's exactly the kind of thing that these types of ideation exercises that he talks about will help compel us to create in our practices. So even if you feel like you're already giving a great experience. There's always room for improvement. And I would really recommend, taking these exercises, these tools from this episode and putting them to practice in your practice. Before we dive in, I'll mention a couple things. One, the audio is a little spotty early on, so just stick with it. It does improve, and I apologize for that. And then finally, if you want to learn more about Duncan, connect with him, you can go to DuncanWarrell.com. It's DuncanWardle.com. And then you can find him on social at Duncan J. Worrell. But it was really, really a pleasure to have him on with his level of experience, with Disney. And there's so many great stories and examples of things that he shares that I think that we can apply to our own practices. So with all that said, please enjoy Duncan Worrell. All right. Welcome to the show, Duncan. Thank you so much for taking the time. It really is a pleasure and an honor to have someone who's had your experience share it with us in the healthcare world. So thank you so much.
Cool. Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, I'll be doing a little intro after we record this that kind of gives the Cliff Notes version of your background. But I always love to ask people and hear their answer to tell us about yourself and what you do.
Well, it all started. I was studying at Edinburgh University in Scotland, and there was a picture of this little guy behind me on the notice board. And I thought, well, what the hell is Mickey Mouse doing here? So I went along and got a job, and I was asked to come out and work in Florida on the International College Program in 1986. And at the end of the year, I went back to London. Disney office in London at the time probably only had about 16 people. Now I think they have about 3,500 people.
Wow.
And I got a job as cappuccino boy. I used to go and get cappuccino 6 times a day from my boss. And I used to collate 50 press kits a day. And the very first assignment was I was told I was going to be the character coordinator tonight at the world premiere of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I thought, okay. In the presence of the Princess of Wales, Diana. I was like, wow. So I thought, well, what's my job? And they said, well, just make sure the character doesn't, kill themselves. I'm like, okay, I could do that. So I stood at the bottom of the stairs, and Roger's job was to come down the stairs. The Princess of Wales would come in along the receiving line. If she chose to engage with Roger, great. If she chose to go into the theater, tough, never mind. So how could you possibly screw that up? Well, so a contingency plan would tell you, and of course I didn't know what a contingency plan was then, I do now, was that you would measure the step because the average width of a stair is probably the length of our feet, unless you're a very tall rabbit with very long feet. And with about 6 steps to go, Roger tripped over Roger's own feet, and he's going hurtling through the air directly towards the head of the Princess of Wales. And at which point he was taken out by 2 Secret Service officers in midair, flattened onto the ground. And so there's this picture of Roger on the ground like this with 2 Secret Service heavies on top of him. And me at the age of 21 in the background going like, oh, shit, I'm fired. So I didn't go to work. I didn't go to work the next day. I thought, well, there's no point, obviously. So I got a call. They said, where are you? I said, I'm at home. I said, oh, I assumed I was fired. He said, no, this is exactly the sort of publicity we need for Roger Rabbit. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So I was like, wow, I could make a career out of this. And so for the next 20 years, I did. I got to do the most audacious, outrageous stunts for Disney that you could possibly imagine. Got to send my son's Buzz Lightyear doll into space for the launch of Toy Story Mania. He went up on Space Shuttle Discovery. He's, in fact, the longest serving astronaut in space. He served 18 months on the International Space Station. And, of course, Buzz got his dream come true because Buzz's dream was to fly, but he couldn't. Well, in zero gravity, and God bless NASA, they took Buzz out on a spacewalk.
That's awesome.
And so I was kind of doing the crazy. I did a couple of Super Bowl halftime shows. I helped design some new attractions and some movie scripts. And then I got a call from the chairman who said, look, you're the guy crazy enough to have the big ideas, and you actually seem to get yours done. So you're going to be in charge of innovation and creativity, to which I replied, well, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
And he said, well, I don't know. We just need more of it. You're like, oh, wow, great. Thanks for the brief. So the first thing I thought, you know what? I know nothing about this. I'm going to interview or survey 5,000 people across our organization, people in Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilm, Disney, animation, Imagineering, and just ask, what stops you being more innovative and creative inside a big corporate enterprise, whether it's the world's #1 entertainment company or whether it's the healthcare industry? And I think really you'll hear the same 5 things. Time, #1 barrier, or lack thereof to think. I don't have time to think, and I'll come back and address that one in just a minute, and the importance of it. 2, I'm risk averse. I've got quarterly results to meet, and therefore I'm not going to take a risk. 3, consumer insight is underused. We're still very product centric. 4, ideas tend to get stuck, diluted, or killed. It's easy to have a big idea, but getting it done, on the other hand, not so easy. And the last one was we all had a different definition of innovation, so we're all heading in different directions. And so with that, we tried 4 models of innovation. We tried model number 1 was I hired one of the gurus of innovation, IDEO, and I said, hey, come on in here and make me look good. That was the brief. And I said, and they would come and run some innovation projects, and they were very good, but then they would leave. And of course, then you would say, well, did we learn how they did what they did? And of course, no, of course not, because they don't want you to learn how they do what they do, or you wouldn't hire them again. So you thought, okay, well, let's try a different model. Let's create an innovation team. I'll be in charge of it. What could possibly go wrong? And so, and what you found was you can become a catalyst for change. There's no question about that. But you also send a subliminal message to the rest of the organization is, hey, we've got an innovation team. You're off the hook. You keep doing business the same way you always have. That's a very dangerous message to send to an organization. Model number 3, we tried accelerator programs, where we would bring in young tech startup companies, surround them with people who knew how to bring their product to market quickly and to scale it. That worked pretty well, but again, only touching 0.2% of the population of the company. And so when people say, well, why did you leave? You're in charge of innovation creativity. You've been there 30 years. Are you mad? Look, there's this enormous gap in the market. Our C-suites are currently standing up there saying, you must innovate. We must take risks. I encourage you to think differently. We must be brave. And all of our employees are sitting there saying, that's great. You're going to show me how to do that? Are you going to show me how? And nobody's showing people how. We're all talking about the importance of innovation, but nobody's giving people basic tools to help them think differently and help them grow their business. So I thought, gosh, I'm just going to take everything I learned at my time as head of innovation creativity at Disney and create a toolkit that makes innovation easier, creativity tangible, and the process fun. You can't change a culture by talking about it. You have to give your employees, good people, they've worked for you for 20 years, the tool they choose to use when you're not around. So you need to make it easy, tangible, and fun. So let's just think about those barriers for a moment, because I'm sure most people are saying, I don't have time to think. Well, here's the importance of time to think. Can I invite you just for a moment, if you would, please, to close your eyes? I'm going to ask you a question. I don't want you to think about it. I need an instant response. Where are you usually, and what are you doing when you get your best ideas?
Maybe in the shower.
Okay, so you can open your eyes. I've asked an audience of 3,000 people. You were here: shower, bathroom, toilet, jogging, running, commuting, falling asleep, reading a book, doing a jigsaw, waking up with a large glass of something. Here are the 2 words I've never heard: at work.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's a bummer, isn't it? Because we're paid to have big ideas at work. So now close your eyes again, and I want you to picture the last verbal argument that you have with somebody. You don't have to tell me about it. Just close your eyes and picture that last verbal argument. Do you see it? Okay, open your eyes. So you're angry at Fred, right? You can open you're angry at Fred. Fred, I can't believe you blind copied my boss on that email. I'll never work with you again. You storm out of the office. You're angry. You're furious. You go over to your local coffee shop. You get a cup of coffee. You sit down. 5 or 10 minutes after the argument's over, you're beginning to relax now. What just popped into your head?
Yeah, probably what you should have said, or how you should have handled it better.
The killer one. The killer. No. You. The killer one-liner. That one line you wished you'd used during the. That absolutely perfect. Oh, if I'd have said that, I'd have had it. The killer one-liner. We could write volumes and volumes and volumes of books of the killer one-liner we never delivered. Why? Because when you're in an argument, your brain is very busy like this. Guess what your brain looks like at work every day? Emails, scheduling, presentation, and we hear ourselves say, "Don't have time to think."
Yeah.
But that split second that you gave yourself time to think, into the shower, you one line or idea just pops straight in there. So how do we create that environment on demand when we need it? Well, option A: bring showers to the office. That could be kind of messy and probably quite ugly. All I do is I run an Energizer. An Energizer is like a 60-second activity designed to make people laugh. And you might think, well, that's crazy. The moment I hear laughter, I know I've opened the door between your conscious and subconscious brain and placed you metaphorically back in a shower. Why is that important? 87% of our brain is subconscious, only 13% is conscious. We use 13% of our brain most of our waking day. But the moment we relax, that door opens just wide enough. And so my job through running Energizers, the moment I hear laughter, I know I've given you access to the other 87% of your brain, where everything you've ever worked on, every piece of innovation you've ever seen, everything creative problems, every industry, it's all back there, waiting to help you solve a challenge. But when the door between your the conscious and subconscious brain is closed, you can't access it. Now, for those who said to themselves, I get falling asleep, that brain state, I call it dreamy delta. It's you're just about to nod off and fall. You're just about that big call when the penny drops. It comes from Thomas Edison. It's that eureka moment. So yes, you walk away from the argument, and that split second that you walk away, that killer one-liner just pops in there. Why is it that does that? Well, because when you're in an argument, your brain is in what I call busy beta, and it's too busy, and the door between your conscious and subconscious brain is firmly closed. But the moment you stepped away from the argument, you're stepped away from the shower, the door between your conscious and subconscious brain opens just wide enough. Why is that important? It's important because 87% of our brain is subconscious, only 13% is conscious. So we're only working with 13% of our brain most of our waking day. But the moment, as I mentioned, you step away from the argument, you step away in the shower, and you give yourself that time to think, that door opens just wide enough that you can come up with a big idea or the killer one-liner. So how do you create that on demand when you need it, when you're trying to think of big, innovative ideas? I run Energizers. Energizers are 1 or 2 minute exercises purely designed to get people to laugh. The moment I hear laughter in the room, I know that I've opened the door between their conscious and subconscious brain just wide enough that I've metaphorically placed them back in the shower, and they can reach all that stimulus of everything they've ever worked on, every industry, everything they've seen that was innovative. It's all back there in your subconscious brain to help you solve the challenge. But when the door between your conscious and subconscious brain is firmly closed, you can't access it. And that's the importance of running an Energizer at the right time. The other thing I do is I'll brief in the ideation session 3 or 4 days in advance, because I know that you will go to that place where you have your best ideas before the ideation session actually starts. So the next brain state, a lot of people probably thought about that they get their best ideas when they're falling asleep or waking up. That's the brain state I call thoughtful theta. You're just about to fall asleep or wake up. And Thomas Edison experimented with it. I don't know if you know the expression when the penny drops, but it's that eureka moment when I get the big idea. Well, Thomas Edison used to fall asleep at night, quite purposely, sitting in an armchair with a penny between his knees, a tin tray on the floor. And as his muscles would relax as he was falling asleep, the penny would drop, it would hit the tin tray, and it would wake him up. And he would write down whatever he was thinking. And you could think, well, that's nuts. Well, okay, who had more patented inventions in the 20th century than anybody else? Right. So if you're one of those people who gets their best ideas as you're falling asleep or waking up, just keep a notepad by the bed. Because you promise yourself you won't forget that idea by the morning, but we all know you will. Yeah. And so, and that's the importance of playfulness. Children are very playful. We all used to be playful. We were all born creative. And simply by being playful, you open that door between your conscious and subconscious brain. I'm not asking people to be playful every minute of every day, but I am asking people to be playful when they're trying to develop new ideas. So that's time. The next one is risk aversion. We've got quarterly results to meet, therefore we are risk averse. And from 1920 to 2020, Wall Street dominated the way we do business, but I don't necessarily believe that will be the case moving forward. Now, why do I think it's going to be different? Well, because of something called, we're watching artificial intelligence, scheduled to be thousands of times more intelligent than the human race by 2030. We're watching blockchain making the world much more transparent. We're watching data getting better and better and better and more informed. And we're investing in the tech side of the house, and we should. But I don't believe enough people are paying attention to Generation Z, a generation who care more about purpose than profit. And not only will they not buy your products and services if they don't believe in what you stand for, they don't want to work for you. Well, how the heck are you going to be relevant 10 years from today if the generation chooses not to work for you? They believe desperately in purpose. And most companies, including healthcare, if you were asked, actually healthcare is probably in a better position because your purpose is to, save lives and to give people better health. But most companies don't know their purpose. And because they don't know their purpose, I don't know that they'll survive. And I'll tell you, here's a tangible example of why purpose is important, because I think a lot of people think purpose is a philanthropic cause. It is not. That's a philanthropic cause. Purpose is, what do you stand for? And so I was asked recently to give a talk to the world's largest tool manufacturer. They make more tools than anybody else. I thought, you know what? I know nothing about the tool industry. I'm a DIY nightmare. I change light bulbs when I have to. And certainly anything in Swedish, I'm not going to take it on. So I went down to Home Depot and Lowe's, and I hung out in the aisles like some creepy guy for 2 days. And I just watched Generation Z at the point of purchase. And I went back to report to the brand. I said, hey, guess what? These people have never heard of you. They've never heard of your brand. They're not talking about your brand. They're not talking about your products. They're not talking about the price point. They're talking about what's important to them. We're going to remodel our dream bathroom, a dream apartment, our dream kitchen. I said, your purpose, if you choose to create one, is you could be the brand who helps people build their dreams. And you could see the finance guys looking at me like I was totally nuts, and how on earth was that going to help them drive their quarterly results? It probably wouldn't, but it might save their jobs and it might save their industry. But actually, I think it's already too late. Why do I believe that? If you're the brand who helps people build their dreams, could you be in healthcare? Yes, you probably could. Could you be in finance? Yes. Insurance? Yes. Sports? Yes. Hospitality? And you could be in any line of business you choose to be. But they're like, no, we make tools and we're really good at it. And our definition of innovation it's iteration. We're going to expand into Mexico and India. They have a growing middle class. They will buy our tools. That's called a product-centric approach, and it will see people out of business in less than a decade. Why? So here's why. We're building houses in Houston, Texas today on a 3D printer. And I'll tell you another story about these incredible people who are just saving people's lives in Italy during the virus through a 3D printer in just a minute. But Amazon spent billions of dollars on shipping last year. It is not in their best interest to continue to do that. China and Mexico are going to try and build towns on a 3D printer in the next 3 to 5 years. Wow. So you didn't have a smartphone 15 years ago. So now accelerate 15 years forward. Are you telling me you won't be able to print a table or a chair in your living room 15 years from today, when we're already building houses in Houston, Texas on a 3D printer? Right. So if I can print anything I want I put it to you that by the year 2035, a third of what you buy online, you'll print at home. Now, if the object is too big, you'll have to go to your local printers. If you can print anything you want on demand 15 to 20 years from today, what will you be using a hammer, a chisel, and a saw for? No, they'll be in a museum, because they don't have a purpose. The next barrier is we say we're very product-centric. We say we're consumer-centric, and the healthcare industry says it's consumer-centric. Right. Then why do we still call them patients? They're not patients, they're people. And so, and they're Dave and they're Sally, but we call the patient number X. Well, no, his name's Dave, her name's Sally. Why not call them Dave and Sally? We come across very medically dressed all the time. And so that gives you a position of authority and credibility and reassurance, which I think is good. But what about care? So, so there's this debate, isn't there? Because when I went to my first American hospital, my father looked at me and said, gosh, is that a hotel? I said, no, Dad, it's a hospital. He goes, no, they have valet parking. I said, yeah, Dad, I know. And so now if I compare it with the hospital that he went through 15 years of cancer treatment in, that hospital could fall down in a nanosecond. It was built in the 1800s. And you think Florence Nightingale could pop around the corner at any moment in time. But, and here's the difference, okay? That hospital doesn't have quarterly results. So the level of care that it's giving to their patients, they don't need to turn the bed by midnight, and the people can stay. And so you can debate it one way or the other. Certainly here in the United States, we have incredible technology that Britain doesn't have, which will save lives. But when you're deeply, deeply, deeply sick, what's more important to you, the technology or the care? I don't know the right answer to it, but I know I've been deeply sick, and I was more grateful to the nurse than I was to the piece of equipment. And so it's just a different way of thinking about it, and re-expressing our challenge. And I can talk about a particular tool that Walt created. It is about re-expressing the challenge can help you think differently. So for example, on July 17th, 1955, on the opening day of Disneyland, Walt said he created a level of hospitality that's never been replicated or duplicated, when he said, you know what, we're not going to have any customers in our park, aka patients in our hospitals. We're only going to have guests. Now think about how you feel when as you're treated as a customer wherever you go.
Mm-hmm.
Think about how you feel when you're treated as a patient wherever you go. And think about crossing the threshold of your best friend's house, and think about how you're treated and how you feel. It is a remarkably different feeling. And simply by re-expressing the challenge that Disney parks would not have any customers in the park, they would only have guests. Not only that, he went further. He said, we're not going to have any employees. We'll only have cast members. They will be cast for a role in the show. They'll wear a costume, not a uniform. They'll work on stage, not backstage. And with that simple re-expression, gave us all a badge of honor that I certainly protected Walt's legacy for 30 years and was incredibly proud to do so. And so fast forward so that's it's a nice example, but I say nice, it's a very good example. But also re-expressing the challenge in 2011, we asked the question, we could have asked the question, how might we make more money? Which is the question that I believe most institutions ask themselves today. I continue to believe Generation Z will put those institutions out of business. I don't care how busy they are today or how big they are today. By simply re-expressing the question and asking, how might we solve the biggest consumer pain point? And we all know what the biggest pain point of going to Disney is. It's the lines. So we said, gosh, what if there were no lines? What if we eliminated the front desks in our 27 hotels? What if we eliminated the turnstile at the front of our parks? What if you didn't stand in line for your favorite character meet and greet or your favorite attraction or to pay for merchandise or food? We didn't know how to do it at the time. You know how to do it. That's iteration, not innovation. Well, we looked around the world and sure enough, there's RFID technology, which when embedded into a little plastic band called Disney's Magic Band, it is your room key now. The 27 front desks in the resort hotels have gone. You no need to check in or check out. It is your theme park ticket. The turnstiles to the 4 parks in Florida are gone. You swipe and go. Your reservations for your favorite 3 character meet and greets or your favorite 3 rides, off you go. You want an item of merchandise sent to your hotel? Touch it once. Want it sent to your house? Touch it twice.
Wow.
You want your hot dog with your pickles on the side and light mayonnaise? You're going to Pinocchio's Village House for lunch today. You walk in when you're ready. You touch table 47. The food comes fresh to you.
Wow.
Had we have asked how might we make more money, we would have iterated, put the gate price up by 3% and made 3% profit margin. But because we turned the challenge on its head and said, how might we solve the biggest consumer pain point? The average consumer in a Disney park today has about 90 to 120 minutes free time every day. They didn't have 4 years ago. What has that resulted in? Record revenues. Record revenues on food and beverage, record revenues on merchandise. And data, millions of people coming through the gates every year are now live crowdsourcing the future design of all products and services Disney parks create by simply telling them what they like and what they don't live every day. And a smaller example, I was in a New Yorker meeting room a few months ago in an office, and I was chatting to this young lady behind the reception desk, and I got upstairs and I said, hey, your receptionist is delightful. She's one of the most empathetic, friendly receptionists I've ever met. And he said, well, how long were you chatting to her for? I said, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes. He said, well, that's odd. I said, why is that odd? He goes, well, we don't have a receptionist. I was like, oh my God, who the hell was I talking to the last time I did? I said, well, her name was Sarah. She had a cream summer dress on. He said, oh, no. Sarah's our director of first impressions. That simple re-expression of the challenge had empowered that young lady to own the space and own the space she did.
Just by changing the title.
Changing perception. So, okay, so we'll do a quick exercise here. Let's say you and I were going to go into business and I was going to come to Austin, Texas, and you and I were going to open a car wash together. Tell me 3 or 4 essential ingredients you would need to have in a car wash.
Essential ingredients: soap, staff, brushes, water.
Okay, that's a good list. Now, what if we were going to go into business and open an auto spa? Now, what could we put in our spa?
An auto star.
Spa, S-P-A, spa.
Okay.
An auto spa. Come on, what could you put?
Oh, okay. So chair massage, facial, quick facial option, maybe a bar setup.
So here's the thing. All I did was re-express the challenge. I said car wash. You went into your river of thinking of what you know to belong in a car wash. Water, sponges, bucket. I said auto spa, essentially the same product, but you immediately got out of your river of thinking and thought differently. So one of the tools that you can use to help you think differently is just simply re-express the challenge. Stop calling them patients. Stop calling them patients.
And
that might be a start.
So then stop calling them patients. What else could could the listeners maybe
Well, so
apply
I
to
think
healthcare?
there are other tools. So example, here's this wonderful example of innovation in healthcare. In the last 7 days, in Italy, the hospital ran out of valves for its ventilator systems, and they couldn't produce them quickly enough. And these two young guys created a valve on a 3D printer where they could knock out. I think they knocked out 120 valves in 24 hours at less than $1 a piece, and gave people life-saving equipment. So just by thinking differently and asking themselves, how might we? What are the rules of making a ventilator? Well, it must be FDA approved. It must be. If they'd waited for FDA approval, 100 people would have died.
Right.
If they'd waited for the traditional production process, 100 people would have died. But they're for less than $1 a piece, by challenging the rules of the industry. So here's how Walt did it, for example, and here's how you can do it. So, I'll give you a more recent example. Did you used to go to Blockbuster Video?
Yes.
Yeah, we all did. And so the founder of Blockbuster listed the rules of going to Blockbuster Video. You must drive to a physical store. You must go during opening hours. You can only rent 3 at a time. You must be kind of rewind. You can never get the one you want on opening day weekend, et cetera, et cetera. And he took one of the rules: you must drive to a physical store. And he said, what if there wasn't a physical store? And he said, well, let me see. Well, YouTube had already existed for a long time before him. YouTube at the time was only streaming amateur content. He said, what if I only stream professional content? I'll do a deal with the movie studios. Nobody would have to drive to a store. I'll be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Everybody gets the one they want on opening day weekend. I'll cut the rental off at the end of 24 hours so nobody pays a late fee. I know, I'll call it Netflix. I'll take my idea to Blockbuster Video 5 times. They'll turn me down 5 times, and I'll take them out of business in less than 5 years. Now, it's easy to look at companies like, so this tool wasn't created by Walt Disney. When he broadcast the film Fantasia, he wanted it to mist inside the theaters during drip, 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 the late push hours. He wanted heat pumped in to the theater during Night on a Bare Mountain. And the theater owner said, no, Walt, too expensive. So Walt listed the rules of going to a movie theater, one of which was, he said, I, Walt, can't control the environment. So he said, what if I could? Well, that's not provocative enough. The more provocative your what if question, the further out of your river of thinking you will get. And he said, well, what if I take my movies out of the theater? Well, that was an absurd question. Well, if I take my movies out of the theater, they can't be 2-dimensional because I don't have any movie screens and people wouldn't be able to see them in daylight. Well, what if I made my movies 3-dimensional? Well, if I make my movies 3-dimensional, I'd have to have people play the characters. Well, if I had people play the characters, Cinderella couldn't live next to Jack Sparrow or Davy Crockett because people wouldn't be immersed in their story. So I'll have to put them in different lands. Oh, wait a minute, I'll call it Disneyland. The biggest creative idea of the 20th century. Now, it's easy to look at Netflix and Disney and take a whole pass and say, oh, those guys have got all the resources they to do whatever they want. Well, okay, Reed Hastings was working out of a garage in 2005 and Walt Disney had no money in 1940. He was bankrupt. But I'll give you a smaller example to make it tangible. A very small production facility in Great Britain in the 70s that made glasses that we drink out of. Notice there was too much breakage and not enough production when the glasses were being shipped and wrapped. So they went down to the shop floor and they watched the glasses being shipped and wrapped and wrote down the rules. 26 employees, conveyor belt, cardboard boxes, 12 glasses to a box, glasses being separated by corrugated cardboard, glasses being wrapped in newspaper, employees reading newspaper. So they're like, So somebody asked the relatively provocative what if question.
You said the employees were reading the newspaper, or?
Yeah, the newspaper that they were wrapping the glasses in.
Oh, I see.
So there was the issue. So somebody asked the relatively provocative what if question, what if we poke their eyes out? Well, that's against the law and it's not very nice. But because somebody had the audacity to ask the provocative what if question, the person next to him got out of their river of thinking, said, well, wait a minute, why don't we just hire blind people? So they did. Production went up over 20%, breakage went down over 75%, and the British government gave them a 50% salary subsidy for hiring people with disabilities. So it is about listing the rules of your industry, picking one and saying, what if that rule no longer existed? It's a very, very easy tool to use. The other one I use a lot is the naive expert. So if I was in the healthcare industry and I was trying to come up with new ideas. The one person I would not have in the room would be a doctor or a nurse or somebody in the healthcare industry, because you all think you're all really good at what you do, and thank God you are, because you save people's lives every day, and for which I am very grateful. And let's face it, everybody is very grateful, right? Probably more grateful than they have been, and probably we should all be more grateful every day. But when a virus like this hits, it just sticks us in the face as to who really is making a difference, and for which we're all incredibly grateful. But if you were to just bring somebody in who's not in your industry, what happens? What does that person have permission to? I call them naive experts. I invite them into every ideation session I run. What does that give that person permission to do that you can't do? Well, it gives them permission to ask the silly question that you can't ask in front of your peers because you're supposed to know the answer. It gives them permission to throw out the audacious idea, ungoverned by your politics, your turf, and your hierarchy. Their job is not to solve the challenge for you. Their job is to stop you thinking from the way you always think and get you out of your river of thinking. They'll say something that, so for example, do you have a pen and a paper?
I do.
Good. I'm going to give you an example of how this works. We were asked to design a new retail dining and entertainment complex for Hong Kong Disneyland. We had in the room 12 white male American architects over 50. That's called groupthink. So I invited in as my naive expert a young female Chinese chef, simply because she was the antithesis of everybody else in the room. And I gave them the following tasks. Now, have you got your pen and paper?
Yep.
Okay, you have 7 seconds to draw the following object. The moment I name it, you start drawing, I'm going to count.
Okay.
A house. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pens down. Now, is your door in the middle at the front?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Did you draw 2 windows, and did you draw bars over them?
No bars, but it does look kind of like a pumpkin now that I'm looking at it.
Okay. And let me guess, what shape's the roof? It's a triangle.
Triangle, yes. Yeah, straight up. Yeah.
So here's and everybody would have drawn the same house as you. Why? Because that is our river of thinking. We've gone into this is all of our expertise, and all of our experience tells us that's what a house should look like. So the 12 white male American architects drew exactly what you drew, and but she didn't. She's a young Chinese chef. She drew dim sum architecture, which was the round bamboo dish that your dim sum would come in with a pork ball, a shrimp ball, and a little lady waving out of a Chinese lady waving out of a window. When we held up our pictures, we laughed because all of ours looked the same, because we stayed in our river of thinking of what a house should look like. She gave us permission to get out of our river of thinking and think differently. Somebody on the way out the door slapped a post-it note over her picture that said, distinctly Disney, authentically Chinese, dim sum architecture. 7 years later, the strategic brand positioning for the Shanghai Disney Resort became distinctly Disney, authentically Chinese. Here's the important part of this that most organizations simply don't understand, because they just do their quotas, because quite frankly, they're just missing the bigger point. Diversity is innovation. If somebody looks different to you, they think different to you. And if they think different to you, they can help you think differently.
And I've been taking notes as we go, and these are all, I love the exercises, and it's obviously a lot of information, and the whole point of really of this podcast and what people, are trying to learn is, how to create a practice where where people are, not patients, people are willing to pay, more out of pocket for a higher level experience. And I think on average, the healthcare the customer experience is kind of a broken thing.
Experience. Yeah. So okay, let's touch on experience for a moment. And so, because here's the importance of experience. Okay. Generation Z, are they going to own a house? No. Are they going to own a car? No. Are they going to own anything big? No. They're buying experiences. How do I already know that? How do we already know that? Well, guess what? Airbnb just told us they're buying experiences. Escape rooms, video games. What else? The Museum of Ice Cream. These are all experiences. Okay. Craft breweries. Why are they successful? They create, what are those things? Speakeasies. They're creating. It's a bar. No, it's an experience first. Walt understood this 100 years before everybody else. Walt created an experience.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to ask you to name 6 of the most successful shopping malls per square foot on the planet, you probably couldn't. By the way, their names are Disneyland, Walt Disney World, Disneyland Paris, Tokyo Disneyland, Hong Kong Disneyland, and Shanghai Disney Resort. But Walt created an experience first, retail second. If you create retail, and I think of hospitals as retail, you are a product or a service. Ultimately, if you're a product or a service, I will probably choose to buy you online. Obviously, that's different for the healthcare industry. But think about an experience. Now, up until a decade ago, Universal Studios were the hard steel ride guys. Disney were the immersive entertainment guys and the experience guys. However, the moment that Universal Studios bought Harry Potter, they realized that instead of selling a Coca-Cola for $2.50, no, sir, that to you is a butterbeer, and I'll sell it at $12.50. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. This plastic stick you see before you, this is no plastic stick, sir. This is Dumbledore's wand, and to you, it's $11.50. And you will gladly pay it plus tax. Why? Because I create an experience first. That's why.
So how can we,
importance of experience,
just, if I were to say off the top of your head, being a non-healthcare, provider, non-healthcare business owner, you bring a unique, set of ideas. So as someone who, as you mentioned before, was a, consumer of healthcare, how would you give, a healthcare business owner, what would you say were the things that you would immediately look at for experience?
Step one, take the fear out of it. There's only one reason to come and visit you. There's only one reason to come and visit a doctor or go to a hospital. That's because I'm scared. There's no other reason to come. I'm scared. Something's gone wrong with me, so I'm going to come. I'm scared. And so take the fear out of it straight away. A smile would be a start. The way, we're going increasingly automated now because we can save on labor costs. The check-in and check-out facility is all on the touch screen. People, when you're frightened, you will need to be reassured. Do you think that iPad can reassure me?
Right.
No, I don't believe my iPad can reassure me. Now, you could say, oh, well, that's going to increase my costs. Yes, it might. No, so I'll give you an analogy from the hospitality industry that I think the healthcare industry could certainly look at, because they're abandoning all of their front desk staff because they think we can check in and check out without friend. Yeah, you could. Of course you could. Could you save some money? Yeah, you'll save $1. But here's the thing. The hospitality industry is investing in tech, and they should, obviously, to a point. But if you only enter into a tech arms race, then nobody wins an arms race, and your competitors will be doing the same thing. So how will your brand stand apart? First of all, I think it should be mandatory for every single person in your office to watch Patch Adams.
Patch Adams.
Patch Adams. Yes. No, I do.
Yeah.
Absolutely mandatory. We are people first. We are patients second. We choose not to be a patient. We only become a patient when we become sick, but we're still a person first. So make us feel like a person. So for example, in the hospitality, after we created Disney's Magic Band, it would be very easy to do away with the front desk staff inside the Disney resorts, because ultimately you didn't need them anymore, right? Well, yeah, okay, we could have done that, but I said, well, hang on a minute, what industry are we in? We're in the hospitality industry. So what if we tried a pilot and brought our front desk staff out in front of the front desk and made them personal concierges for all the people who can't afford to stay on the 5th floor? Intent to recommend and intent to return went up very quickly, very fast. So we did a formal pilot on board the Disney cruise ships and asked the stateroom hosts to clean the rooms to not work for 1 hour a day, and we'll pay them. But in return, we wanted them to engage and talk and engage with our guests. Intent to recommend and intent to return spiked higher than any capital investment, any technology investment that we have made on board our cruise ships. So how might the healthcare industry look at health care? Second word, care. Right? I don't see. So how might we create an experience? So there is a wonderful example down here in where I am in Orlando, Florida. I haven't been in it for many, many years. I don't like getting into CAT scan machines. I don't like getting into, what's the really long one? I forget.
MRI.
Yeah, I mean, if you're claustrophobic, these are not great places to be. But they pumped in oil, coconut oil. So the same sort of oil that you would smell on a beach. The walls are all painted in sandcastles, and the ceiling is painted with clouds and skies and seagulls, and they pump in the noise of the beach.
It's a great example.
It's a wonderful example of just taking a little bit of the fear off the edge and helping you feel a little more relaxed.
And it's something that I think would be related is, as I was looking into you, I was watching your TEDx videos, and you'd said the single biggest barrier to innovation is your own expertise. How could you expand on that for, getting a healthcare provider to get out of their expertise and think about ways to change that customer experience?
Well, I think, that's why I created this toolkit. This toolkit is specifically designed to stop people thinking the way they always have and to help them think differently. So I said car wash, you said water, brushes, bucket. I said auto spa, you said cappuccino, masseuse. So, you say secretary, you say director of first impressions. So that's one tool. You list the rules of like Walt, where he listed all the rules of the industry and asked, what if one of those rules no longer existed? Came up with Netflix, came up with Disneyland. That's another tool. By bringing a naive expert into every session you run. I think the other thing that I also think is incredibly important is go spend a day with your consumer in their house and find out what's important to them. And you'll be amazed at the insights for innovation you find by simply spending a day with your consumer. Or, when you go into as a patient, so think about it from now, suddenly you're the patient. If I remember rightly, and I may have got this wrong because I'm going to go watch Patch Adams now because I haven't seen it for 30 years. If I remember rightly, he was quite an arrogant doctor. And then he became a patient and he saw it from the patient's perspective. So almost one of the things you might do is sort of almost like go visit a hospital as a patient, go visit a doctor's office as a patient, and just see the things you notice from the other side of the counter that you might not have noticed from your side. Because it's a very different perspective. But again, I go back to the only reason people are there is because they're frightened, because they're hurting. And they want credibility. They want the medicine and the technology to help them feel better. But the first thing they want is reassurance.
Very good. So, kind of switching the approach here, in the middle of this coronavirus epidemic, I was something I had thought of because I could tell I love the way your mind works as far as figuring out problems. So what if Disney were to come to you today and say, hey, our Disney Plus is way up because everyone's stuck at home and that's awesome, but our parks are getting hammered. What can we do? I mean, if this thing goes on for a year, what can we do now? What are some ideas you might come up with?
The ultimate, that's a good challenge. Nothing like being put on the spot. I think Disney did the right thing. They closed them. They closed the single site employer in the United States of America is Walt Disney World. 70,000 full-time, up to 96,000 with part-time employees. Wow. They closed it in less than 5 days. They are paying all of their employees while it's closed up to a point. So they did the right thing, right? And they did it quicker than anybody else. If you think about the thing people are thinking of closing now, it's like, guys, really? If this is, by the way, the Walt Disney World Resort is twice the size of Manhattan. And if they closed, shouldn't that be a signal to everybody else?
Right.
To help the medical industry out, to help stretch this virus out so we all don't hit the hospital and overwhelm the healthcare system at the same time by doing the right thing. And so I've heard of lots of other organizations who, they're laying off their employees, but they're not paying them. It's like, come on, step up. So I'll give you an example. This will be an easy example. So calculate how many executives there are in any particular line of business. I won't name a brand because that's not fair, but any brand. How many executives globally does this brand have? Take their annual bonus, 1 year's annual bonus, and give it back. It's 1 year. It's an annual bonus. How many jobs could you save in your industry by simply giving back 1 year's annual bonus of your executive team? It's not going to hurt them, and it could save a lot of people's jobs for many, many years to come. That would be one example.
It's an interesting time that we are living in right now, and I think innovation and creativity is ever more needed. And I think with what you've given and I'll certainly, recap these things and be implementing them with my coaching students as well. I think that we can kind of find those rules that maybe we can make not exist anymore. We can figure out how to really identify the biggest pain points and create a very different customer experience when they're coming to the clinic. And so thank you, so much for all of those toolkit, components to get us thinking differently in an industry that it feels like there's been a lot of innovation and advancement, but when it comes to the actual customer experience, we've really not.
That's it.
We've
There's
really
been
not
amazing innovation on the technical side of the house, not so much on the customer experience. Right. That said, if I would finish with only 2 words, it's a very heartfelt thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for everything you do. For everybody listening and everybody in the healthcare industry. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time. And where can people find out more about you, connect with you, maybe have you help coach their team and into being more innovative and changing these customer experiences?
My site is Duncan Worrell, which is not spelled as a donut. Thank you, Starbucks. It's the first king of Scotland. Duncan, WARDLE.com. Or my social, if people want to follow me, is Duncan J. Wardle. So that's DUNCAN, initial J, WARDLE.
Wonderful. Thank you again for your time. I deeply appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Cash-Based Practice Podcast. If you liked what you heard here today, we have some extremely important things we want to send you. First, a quick start guide to cash-based physical therapy and Medicare. This free ebook will provide the primary rules and regulations surrounding this confusing but important topic. Secondly, we want to share with you the 5 characteristics common to all successful cash-based practices. Find out the vital things Jarod has learned from years of interviewing cash practice owners and running his own successful cash practice. As one of our listeners, we want to give you all this information absolutely free. You can get it right now by going to drjarodcarter.com/success. Again, that's drjarodcarter.com/success. Go there now to get your copies, and we'll see you next time.